Hey everyone, welcome back to Build. I'm your host, Brittany Jones-Cooper, and today I'm sitting down with Van Jones. As a host of the Redemption Project on CNN, he takes viewers into the room as offenders come face to face with those impacted by their violent crimes as a way to heal, seek answers, and move forward. Take a look.
We like to imagine that after there's been a verdict, that the story is over. The reality is the journey is just beginning.
I want him to look me in the face and tell me why he killed my mother.
There's no way that you could actually prepare for something like this. I don't know where we're gonna land, but we're all in, man.
The Redemption Project with Van Jones premieres Sunday, April 28th at 9.
Put your hands together for Van Jones. Mr. Jones, Mrs. Jones.
Yeah, exactly. Keeping up with the Joneses.
That's what I'm saying.
Hard to do.
Hard to do. This series, I think, is so important. I got to check out 2 episodes, and it was a wild roller coaster of emotion, and it brought up a lot of things in me and a lot of questions about our judicial system and our criminal justice system. It focuses on the idea of restorative justice. So can you explain to us what that means?
Sure. Well, first of all, the way that this documentary series works is we have 8 episodes. We talk to 8 people who've done really bad stuff, who want to make amends, who want to atone. Sometimes it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, but they want to do something. And we talked to the 8 families who were hurt, sometimes surviving family members, because the crime was actually a homicide. And then we filmed those 2 parties talking to each other face to face for the first time. And it is a powerful, I can't really describe it. People usually, after they watch it, they say they don't really have words. Exactly. Because it's kind of a heartbreak to hope journey that people go on. And it's not, people say, oh, this is a true crime thing. No, true crime is a whodunit. Like, we already know who done it. This is about the truth long after the crime, where people still have not healed. People still have questions. And it turns out that when something really bad happens to you and you're left with questions you don't know, you're in your own kind of prison. Now, you may have gotten the verdict that you wanted, that person may be in prison, but you're in your own kind of prison. And the only person who's got a key to that prison you're in is the person who did it, who could actually maybe help you get to some kind of understanding. And so we film it. Listen, 2 of the 8 shows, they do not get to any kind of warm and fuzzy place. Okay, 2 of the 8 shows is like, hey, you hurt my child, I can't get there with you, but I still learned something. I'm glad I talked to you, but I can't get there. But 3 out of the 8, they actually get to a point where they go and help get the person out of prison successfully. So you literally have the full range of human emotion. And the reason I want you to do this series and do this show, I just feel like empathy, grace, compassion, forgiveness has just left the culture. That is no longer trendy. What's trendy is cancel culture, call out culture, I'm gonna block you culture. That's what's trendy. And it's poison. And you can't live that way. And I wanted to put some medicine out there.
And I think in watching it, it's so easy for us to make people monsters and make them villains, to take the emotion and the personal stories out of it. And what this series does so well is you get full backstories on both sides. And so you really feel armed at the end to watch these 2 groups come together. Was there a catalyst for you in wanting to tell these stories specifically?
Well, for 25 years, I've been working in the criminal justice system. I've been going in and out of prisons as an attorney, as an advocate, as an activist. And I discovered something that was kind of shocking to me, given what most people would assume. There are diamonds behind those walls. There are people who, they may have gone into prison, remorseless, arrogant, hard-hearted, but there are some people, despite the prison conditions, transform themselves. And I have met people behind bars, geniuses, unbelievable human beings that are more sane and more wise than 99% of the people out here. And I wanted to give those people a chance to be seen and heard from. But to your point, we also hear from the people who've been hurt. And we don't pull any punches in terms of what that is about. And I just think the opposite of criminalization, this kind of process by which you start seeing a whole community of people as just bad guys. Oh, those people in the hood, those people. The opposite of criminalization is humanization. And so this show just tries to humanize both sides of it. Doesn't excuse anybody's bad behavior, but but does at least put a human face on both sides so that when people do sit down and talk, you really find yourself rooting for something positive to happen, when at the beginning you're like, I'm never, ever gonna like that person with the face tattoos, not that person. And at the end you're like, so.
I told you it was a roller coaster of emotion
Yeah.
for me. How did you find people who were willing to share these very personal stories? And I mean, for some of them, sharing the loss of their child and reliving that over again.
Look, it wasn't easy, but here's the thing. Nobody has really put this on TV before. There's an underground movement called Restorative Justice. It is a different way of thinking about justice than what we've been taught. We've been taught what's called retributive justice, retribution-based justice, revenge. You hurt me, I'm gonna hurt you. You damage the community, we're gonna damage you. We're gonna add damage to damage and get justice. That's what we've all grown up with. That's what we've seen. Unfortunately, if you look at some of our communities now, you add damage to damage, you just get more damage. And sometimes you actually are adding to the cycle of violence. And so there's another view, and again, obviously, people do bad stuff, they need to be held accountable. But there's another view that says, how about restorative justice? How do you know when you have justice? When the person who's been harmed has been restored to a place of wholeness, and the community has been restored to a place of wholeness, and the person who did wrong has atoned and taken responsibility and has been restored to a place of wholeness. That's a different standard. And the tools for doing that, believe it or not, are just human conversation. Why did you do this? Do you know what this meant to me? Are you sorry? What happened? In court, it's not like that. As soon as something bad happens between me and you, all the experts jump in. The police, the professional investigators, the lawyers, the judges, the jury, everybody jumps in, and guess what? The victim is silent. They're not in charge of the trial. The prosecutor's in charge of the trial. They may get a chance to testify, they may not. They may get a little victim impact statement at the end, they may not. The person who's being charged probably just gonna plead. They're never gonna go on the stand and say what happened. So at the end of it, all you have is a verdict. The truth never came out, and the victim still doesn't know what happened. 5 years later, 20 years later, still doesn't know what happened. Now, we spent all this money, and that person is still not healed. And so what we're saying is we're going to come back. This underground movement, restorative justice, these little groups all over the country have been trying to get to healing and helping people find each other and talk. So we approached this movement and some of these leaders and said, can we put it on television? They said, get the heck out of here. This is not for TV. I said, no, this is not going to be reality TV, sensationalizing. But something beautiful is happening. And honestly, if these folks could sit down and talk, and do sit down and talk, well then that could set an example for the whole culture. Because we don't talk to each other now based on who you voted for in 2016. If I went to college with you and you voted for the wrong person, I unfriended you and blocked you a long time ago. So we're in a place where, there's no forgiveness, there's no second chance, there's no conversation. And so we found a few, and it was hard, but we found these 8 families who were willing not only to talk to somebody who had done this, but willing to have it put on television. And because it's never been done before, they don't know what it's supposed to be. Nobody's acting. It's just, it's just, they're just there, just every word. There's not one prompt. There's not one, in reality TV, they just give you the script. None of that. It's just authentically people talking about what's going on in their lives and what they need, and it's riveting.
Well, what got me was it was very much like a group therapy session.
Yes.
I mean, it's not just these 2 people in a room. There are professionals there
Yes.
to help them if they can't find the words, to help them connect to how they're feeling. It really is therapy for both sides, and you start to realize how much rehabilitation prisoners don't get, and how they really never learn to process or grow from the trauma.
It's very hard. Yeah, and the few that do, it's miraculous. And look, for me, I'm so proud to be at CNN. My father and I used to watch CNN when it first started. Back when cable was like HBO, CNN, and TBS. I don't know, it was like not that much. So to be on CNN, and then to have CNN give a show like this has never been shown before. This is It's not true crime. It's not reality television. It doesn't even have a genre. It's just that raw. And for them to put it at 9 o'clock on Sundays, which is the Anthony Bourdain slot, that's sacred ground at CNN. That gives you a sense of the kind of importance that CNN is putting on this series and on these stories. And it can be very healing, I think.
For you, you're there throughout the process, but during the meetings, you step in another room and you let these two people do what they need to do. But for you watching, you were very much like a viewer. What was the thing that surprised you the most about these interactions? Maybe something that you didn't expect going in.
Well, first of all, just the courage of both sides. You can imagine the courage of being somebody who, lost someone, and you're walking into a prison to talk to the person who was responsible. That takes a lot of courage. What I didn't really realize how much courage it takes to stand up in your prison cell and walk down the tier and sit down across from that person whose life you changed forever and look them in the eye and apologize and answer any question that they have and be willing to take whatever they throw at you. So there's Olympic levels of moral courage on both sides. I mean, when I say Olympic level, like when you watch the Olympics, you're like, I didn't know human beings could do that. That's how I feel about these families. Like, I didn't know that human beings could open themselves up in that way and even try. And like I said, even though it doesn't always wind up warm and fuzzy, the fact that people are even willing to try, the amount of courage that it takes, that surprised me. Also, for the people who lost children, especially young children, there's something I didn't understand, which is that every year, the kids that grew up with their child have a graduation. My child didn't get to graduate. A wedding, whatever it is. And you're just constantly being hit with these anniversaries and constantly being hit with these birthdays and constantly being hit with watching, everybody else's child get a chance to grow up. And I had never really considered that. And so that's very present as well. And at the same time, what those parents used to do in the memory of their child is sometimes so inspiring and breathtaking. So you said it's a roller coaster. Yeah. I'm going to tell people, that sounds too heavy. No, it's a heartbreak to hope kind of a show. And we need some catharsis. As mad as we are, the person in the next cubicle, we need some real catharsis. These are folks dealing with real stuff and finding a way through. And it really leaves people empowered to look at maybe our lesser challenges and find more courage.
And I think to be paying more attention to the criminal justice system.
Yes.
We have a lot of things going on in that space. Last year, Trump passed the bill. Mm-hmm. There's some positive things in that bill. Do you think that's enough, or do you think there's still a lot of work to do there?
Well, the bipartisan bill that I got a chance to work on, along with a bunch of other people in Washington, D.C., is called the First Step Act, which gives you a sense that we don't think it's enough. When you call it the first step, that implies it's going to be a second, third, fourth, and fifth. But it broke the logjam. It broke the freeze. You really had, both political parties had been stuck on stupid for so long. Having passed all these bills and built all these prisons and, we have the crack epidemic, great, we're just going to put everybody in prison. What could possibly go wrong? And then you now have generations of people who are being impacted. So luckily with the opioid situation, maybe because the demographics are different, people are responding to that addiction crisis a little bit more humanely. But we got to look back at how both political parties built all these prisons, filled them up with poor folks and disproportionately people of color. And so I think we have a long way to go. I'm proud to be working with the Reform Alliance, which Jay-Z and Meek Mill and 6 other heavy hitters got together earlier this year and launched the reformalliance.com to do something about the criminal justice system and to do something about probation and parole in particular. And they picked me to be the CEO to get this thing up and running. We're going to do an amazing campaign in Pennsylvania, bipartisan, to fix some of the laws there, and we're going to keep going. But I think we've maxed out on stupid. I just think that we've just gone so far. When the criminal justice system, I went to Yale. I saw more kids doing drugs and hard drugs and serious drugs at Yale than I ever saw in a housing project. But those kids at Yale, they got in trouble, they went to rehab. They didn't go to prison. Nobody even called the police on them. They was like, these kids are having a problem, let's help them. 4 blocks away in New Haven in the housing projects, same age group, kids doing fewer drugs with less money, all went to prison. So people say, well, what are you trying to say? I'm just saying we know what to do with kids who get in trouble with drugs. We do it with rich folks' kids. Let's do this. Let's give the same help to poor folks' kids that we do to rich folks' kids, and we'd have a much smaller prison population and a much healthier society. So that's really where I think this thing has to go. But again, the reason that we don't see it that way is criminalization is a process by which a whole community comes to be seen as inherently suspect, dangerous, and therefore needs to be walled off. The opposite of criminalization is humanization, where you begin to, no, they just like me. That's my kid. I got an uncle who, drinks too much. I've got a cousin who's on drugs. I would never say I want my cousin to do 20 years in prison. I said I want my cousin to get help. So once we start treating each other as human beings, and that's the point of the Redemption Project, is to begin this process of humanization. That's the point of the Reform Alliance, trying to get us to focus on humanization.
Definitely. And I do think the criminal justice system is something that's really easy for people to ignore, right? Because if it doesn't affect them, then they don't have to worry about it. And I know you've been working with Kim Kardashian, and I think that's one person who people have been critical of in the past, but now she's able to actually bring attention to some of these issues. Do you think it takes a Kim Kardashian or that celebrity for people to care?
Look, I think that it takes a lot of work from all kind of people. First of all, I have to admit, I was on the Kim Kardashian was not somebody who I knew personally. So I just was going off of what the media said. And when I met her, I was blown away because her dad was a lawyer. She's a mom of 3 black kids with a 4th one on the way. She's not this kid that she was with Paris Hilton or whatever. She's a grown-ass woman, a mom, and when she found out about a couple of these cases of women in particular just being brutalized by the system, something clicked on in her, and she put on that cape, and she hadn't taken it off. And a year ago, people always said publicity stunt. No, Kim is working hard every day on tough cases. She's interning with an organization I'm a part of, Cut 50. And she's studying to become a lawyer, and she's going to be a damn good lawyer. And so I do think that we've got to when people who we might have been critical of them being frivolous, then get serious. Well, then you can't criticize them when they were frivolous and now when they're serious. At some point, we have to accept this woman is serious about what she's serious about.
And I see you too, this is something you're serious about. You've worked with the Trump administration. You'll work with a reality show star, whatever it takes to get the attention on the issues.
Yeah, because people in prison, look, my liberal friends and folks on Twitter say, Van Jones is a sellout because he went and met with Donald Trump. I said I went and met with Donald Trump when he endorsed my bill and signed the bill. And we got, almost 1,000 people out of prison. If they implement it right, and they may not, but if they implement it right, it'll be another 3,000 this year who get out of prison, who had been stuck in prison, and 25,000 people who this year for sure, who would have had longer sentences will have shorter sentences on the front end because of this bill, and there's even more to the bill than that. So my thing back to the folks is, hold on a second. You mean to tell me you hate Donald Trump so much that you're willing to leave 180,000 people stuck in hell in prison and not do anything to help them because you lost the election? 180,000 people in federal prison, they didn't get a chance to vote. So you're telling me that they deserve less advocacy now because Democrats like myself lost an election than they did under Obama. So the only time they deserve an advocate, you're telling me, is when we win an election, you like the president. I have never been in a prison where someone came up to me and said, get me out of here. I'm being brutalized. I miss my children. I want to be able to go home. But Van Jones, no matter what you do, don't talk to any Republicans. I've never met that prisoner. I've never met that person behind bars. What I find is people saying, well, somebody do something. And they don't care who's in the White House. They want to go home to their house. And so I feel like there are some issues for people at the bottom who have no real human freedom or dignity. If you're stuck in addiction, if you're stuck in mental health challenges, if you're stuck in generational poverty, if you're stuck in a broken criminal justice system, neither political party has done much for you. And so on those issues, I'll draw a circle, and I'll say I'll work with or against any Democrat or any Republican to help on those issues. Now, you get outside that circle, I'm on the left side of Pluto, okay? And we'll just have to fight and scrap, and and that's a democracy as well. But we're supposed to be as excited in a democracy to fight where we disagree as we are to work together where we do agree. We now gotten to the point where if I don't agree with you on 100%, I'm gonna work with you on 0%. Even with Donald Trump, I told President Trump, listen, with you, I got 99 issues, but prisons ain't one. Okay? I got 99, but prisons ain't one. If you want to work on this prison stuff, we can ride on that. And as you see me on CNN, I don't give them a pass on anything else. But on this issue, I'm proud to work with any administration to get people out of prison and get people home with their families.
It's way bigger than politics.
Way bigger.
Way bigger. On that topic, though, we're starting to ramp up politically. I know you've actually had the chance to sit down with a lot of people who are the Democratic nominees for president. What are your feelings so far? I mean, you've sat down with quite a few. Who do you want to sit down with? What is sort of your vibe as we ramp up here?
Part of my problem is I know all these folks. I'm 50 years old, so I've known Cory Booker for 25 years. I've known Kamala Harris for 20 years.